Ladies and gentlemen, coming soon, a podcast you've all been waiting for. The movie podcast to end all movie podcasts. A podcast that discusses and critiques the best of the best and the worst of the worst movies playing at a theater near you. With a host whose opinions have been deemed as fact by your favorite fact checkers. And that's a fact. Without further ado, let me introduce you to the movie maestro, the tyrant of theater, the gumshoe of review, the man that makes theater employees and Hollywood execs shiver by his mere presence. Ladies and gentlemen, the judge, the jury, the sultan of cinema, Justin Henson. Welcome to the Movie Wire.
Welcome to this week's edition of The Movie Wire. I'm your host, Justin Henson, and welcome to the show. This week, we're going to be doing something a little different. This week, I made some time on the show to spend a little bit more time on two movies. One movie that people are talking about right now, which is Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, in which I will give a complete spoiler-free review, and also I have a special and terrific review that Josh over at the Talking Smack podcast sent my way. It's an absolutely fantastic review, and I absolutely love Josh's takes on these films. Also, we have a movie that people will be talking about more and more in the coming months, as I am confident we will see this film come Oscar time, which is the Banshee of Inisherin, starring Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson. These two films will be the primary focus of this episode, so let's jump right into it. Are you ready for my verdict? Let's go.
Out of the windows to watch a roar and a burst of flame. The Movie Wire podcast. We just need people like me.
Podcast for hot and trending movies.
The Wire.
And here we go.
Now, before I get into the review, just a heads up, this will be a complete spoiler-free review of Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. I will limit this review to just the bare essentials of criticism, my emotional responses, and vague general thoughts of the viewing. During this review, I will give a review and such to keep the review on point to not ruin the film-going experience. With that said, here's the follow-up to 2018's Black Panther that would be the most challenging Marvel movie to date. With the tragic passing of the extremely talented Chadwick Boseman, we find the people of Wakanda fight to protect their home from intervening world powers as they mourn the death of their king.
Tell me how to best protect Wakanda.
Without the Black Panther, Wakanda will fall. My ancestors would often say, only the most broken people can be great leaders. My enemies call me Namor.
They came from the water. He has superhuman strength.
I need to know if Wakanda is an ally or an enemy.
You can come and find out.
Let our gracious response to this incursion be an olive branch. Further attempts on our resources will be considered an act of aggression and met with a much steeper response.
That can't be good.
He's coming. For the surface world. Vibranium. He's covered in it.
His people did not call him general or king. They called him Kukul Khan, the feather serpent god. Killing him will risk eternal war.
My mother told stories about a place like this. A protected land with people that never have to leave. That never have to change who they were. What reason do you have to reveal your secret to the world?
We know what you whisper. They have
lost the protector.
Let the fate of our discovery stop us from doing what is right. No more.
Now, I have to give credit where credit is due, where we see the tragic loss of life during a franchise, especially one that represents a comic book hero. It is so easy for studios to recast, digitally put in, or give the death of a character that is so over-dramatized to almost give an excuse of why our leading talent is not in the film. Marvel Studios, hands down, has done one of the best jobs I have ever seen in film to pay tribute to a lost talent and respect to the actor and the character he played. It would be very easy for Marvel Studios to keep the tradition of keeping with the status quo of attempting to deliver a Marvel-esque movie to keep the phase going, with or without our leading man, by giving the fans everything that they wanted from a sequel from the 2018 film. Not only do they do something a little different with this movie, they go all in with a $200 million budget tribute to the late Chadwick Boseman. And the topic of mourning, in which the passion put into this film, the filmmakers well realize he was one of the reasons the original Black Panther was so successful. And just a mere thought of what the studio does with this movie, with such a big budget to show honor of our late talent, gives the opportunity for our entire cast to show the love they have not only for the character, but for the man of the character. Now, this is a word I normally don't say about Marvel films. I'm not talking about the special effects or the technical aspects of the movie. I'm talking about the pure human nature of it, and that word is absolutely beautiful. We tend to look at Marvel films to give us a hero to root for, a hero we want to be, a hero that brings out the imagination, the triumph, and the battle between good and evil. Wakanda Forever gives us not just one hero to root for, but the entire cast, while the memory of our original Black Panther and moral shine through these characters, and at times show the pain and stages of loss. The film was written by Ryan Coogler and written by Joe Robert Cole and written by Ryan Coogler as well. And you could tell they had a love of Boseman and a love of the character he stood for. And these two are just as heroic as the characters they have written, for not only the challenge of what would be one of the most difficult movies of their careers, and do it justice to the fans, and keep it to Marvel standards. And my hat is off to these two. Coogler and Cole tackle something that is unexpected in a film like this, and the complexity of the idea is admirable, and the execution is extremely emotional in two aspects: the fact they honored Boseman, and the obvious attempt at the effort and love they put into this to ensure it. You can feel our two filmmakers' love with Boseman and the passion they had for him. Now, even going further with Coogler and Cole, our two creators tackle topics of female mourning, of loss, while integrating that into a previous story that we had a male superhero with power, and having this vulnerability of loss isn't treated as a weakness, but using intelligence and the power of what family stood for as a superpower, and not just muscle or superpowers to drive his characters, to drive his story. The execution of this theme and this messaging is done well. It's a female character story, and Coogler and Cole takes this angle and uses it to inspire without being preachy. It's inspiring to not just show a female-led cast and all they do is just go around and kick some butt. We see weakness, we see vulnerabilities, we see strength through the intelligence and diplomacy. We see the love and emotion not only from the directing and writing, but from every single performance in the film. And more specifically, a shout out to Angela Bassett as Ramona, Queen of Wakanda. I rarely say this about Marvel performances, but there is no other way to put it based on all the movies I've seen thus far this year. Bassett's performance will stay with me at top of mind this year as one of the most memorable and emotional performances. And it is easy to overlook performances in big budget blockbusters. Her performance in this deserves a nomination when it comes to Oscar time. Her powerhouse of a performance made me leave the theater and just say, wow. I would gladly watch Bassett for nearly 3 hours and a 3-hour special effects extravaganza. The entire cast of characters and performances, each character complements the progression of the story without trying to outshine each other. That includes our villain, Namor, played by Tennessee Quarta, in which gives a subtle but almost humble threat, and is in a comparable situation as our Wakandans. And there is a good moral balance of question here that stays neutral throughout the film. And even when Namor's true intent comes clear, the threat is still there, but the moral question is still up in the air. Now, Black Panther is full of emotional surroundings of a fallen hero, but the film still attempts to balance some humor, appearances, and Easter eggs to appease the Marvel audience. But it's subtle and perfectly balanced, and nothing really feels out of place. It doesn't force the fun factor to the audience, and it generally creates a feel of tone and emotion that feels natural and real. Now, the lighting and tone is a little different than what we get from any other Marvel movie that is usually very specific on colors and tone that Marvel uses to generate a sense of fun and awe. Black Panther tends to stick on the dark tones and mostly matte colors integrated into scenes, primarily with the costume suits or a green speedo, if you will. Now, I am still tossed on this one, even though at times it's hard to really take in the environment in which the characters are in, with it being so hard to see at times. But in a film about mourning, loss, and tragedy, the filmmakers wanted the performances to speak for the film, not the spectacle or the overly used brightness and gloss. The brightness moments we see in the beginning of the film, where we see Wakanda celebrate the life of our lost Black Panther and King. After this beautifully shot scene of celebration of life, an extraordinary costume design that, again, you will probably see at the Oscars, the movie gives a slow decrescendo transition to the tone that most of the rest of the film will be. Black Panther Wakanda Forever is a far from perfect film, and there will be a lot of varied opinions as we would expect when it comes to the entry of the Marvel phases. And I'm not a complete comic book expert, and I'm not going to pretend to be. I leave that comic book expertise to my dear friend Josh over at Talking Smack. The first couple of phases of Marvel movies, the cameos are easily recognizable, but as Marvel deep dives into some of the other characters that aren't necessarily widely known, at least by me, I wouldn't know the relevance of the comic book storyline. All I can do is just follow what I see on screen. Now, I wanted to make that clear before I tick off some hardcore fans by saying what I didn't like. For starters, Black Panther wouldn't be a Marvel film without the battle between our main villain and protagonist. For the length of the film, when we get to this point, it felt rushed and just placed in to appease the fans. The last half hour to 40 minutes just seems like it had way too much on its plate to do to make the film seem well balanced. We are introduced to some new outfits for our heroes, and to be perfectly honest, they absolutely bug the crap out of me on the design and style. It reminded me of watching a sci-fi movie from the 70s and 80s. They just look a little shinier, but the design concept just looks extremely cheap and elementary, and it came off as the opposite of what Marvel usually does. We are usually in awe of what the hero is wearing, and it complements the character, and it complements the actual action. These just look extremely cheesy and silly, and when some of the special effects are focusing on the character's action, it does come across very artificial, which takes away from the awe. And there are holes in the story and dialogue that often contradicts itself. For example, one line where we see our main villain Namor warns our main character Shuri, played by the very lovely Letitia Wright, that without a diving suit, her body would be crushed from the pressure of the ocean. But then shortly after, the characters just seem to forget about this, as well as science, and not have any suit or any protection from the water, and they just end up perfectly fine. And we see these holes of being unrealistic throughout the movie, but I'm not going to list them all in this review. But they do pop up throughout the movie. Next, we have our new Julia Louis-Dreyfus, who plays almost like a Nick Fury figure, wiggling her way into these movies as a way to connect all of them, but in a less likable way. Her performance drove me nuts. Her portrayal came across as extremely sitcom-y and hard to watch on screen. It seems like she lacks the proper motivation from the lack of knowledge of the character. This was an odd casting choice for me, given she has one of those faces people just recognize, and I can see the appeal of seeing Elaine from Seinfeld or Selena Meyer from Veep pop up in a Marvel movie might put a smile across your face, but most of her resume has been TV shows and sitcoms. She didn't really change much in her acting style from TV to movie with this character, except she says her lines slower and has no facial expressions. And being a person of authority in the movie, there is no curiosity, danger, or threat. She's just there. They might as well just cut and pasted clips from the old Veep episodes in, and people wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Now, there is a post-credit scene, and just to give some context, I saw an advanced screening where the entire audience didn't know what or how many post-credit scenes they were going to show. Without giving anything away, this is the one Marvel film after seeing the first credit scene, I actually was hoping there wasn't going to be a second one. And that's not a bad thing. I think it was an absolutely brilliant approach. I think it matched the emotional impact of the film perfectly. And to add an additional scene after that would have felt in bad taste and unbalanced. So I think they made a great decision keeping it to one cut credit scene that went with the tone of the film. Black Panther Wakanda Forever is an outstanding tribute to Chadwick Boseman, especially making his character's cause of death in the movie feel real, and it really hits home. You can feel the heart and love from the entire crew, from the writer, the director, the entire cast, and you can feel their passion and love and emotion shine through their work. While it takes it up a step when it comes to the softer Marvel movie with more focus on characters versus spectacle, it takes a step back for the Marvel phases where we don't really gain anything, and what the filmmakers try to put in there is just okay hints. But they are subtly put in. It makes you wonder if Marvel's going to even do anything with these hints, or is it just going to be a plug for another Disney Plus show? Black Panther had a vision of honoring Boseman in a Marvel-esque way and invited the cast to mourn and let the audience mourn with them, which to an extent I find honorable and brave, especially with the big budget it had. And nowhere in the 2 hours and 45 minutes does it feel like a cash grab. It feels emotional. And I find the execution of what they were trying to do very successful. They don't just visit and briefly discover our characters' struggle, they make it known. And at times it can be a very powerful thing to watch when a cast is just in unison together on the sadness of loss. The characters interact in a truly unique way. But just looking solely at a Marvel edition to move its phases and franchise on, to me it misses the mark just a tad. But I'm not reviewing the Marvel films holistically, just this one. And even though I can respect the vision and what they were trying to do, what I can respect more is the execution the creators were successful in. They made the audience feel, they made the audience mourn. For an almost 3-hour runtime, this movie is unique in its own way. I'm giving Black Panther Wakanda Forever 3 stars. Now, before we get into the rest of the show, don't forget to check out my reviews for movies that just hit streaming and are available to rent or buy now, including a film that will definitely not put a smile on your face, but on purpose, in the new horror film Smile, which smiled its way to 3 stars. Another movie that definitely will not put a smile on your face just because it is just purely awful, in Amsterdam, which got 1.5 stars. A powerful character study movie that is mesmerizing and captivating in Tar, which received 3.5 stars. The new rom-com with 2 of the biggest smiles in Hollywood in Ticket to Paradise, in which received 2.5 stars. A movie that's so over the top that it actually works and is a love letter to all those 80s slasher fans, in The Terrifier 2, which received a generous 3 stars. And finally, a great rom-com premise is brought down by consistent negativity by its characters in Bros, which got 2.5 stars. You can find those reviews on my previous episodes, and just a reminder, if you haven't yet, make sure you hit follow or subscribe and leave me a review on Apple Podcasts. And make sure you follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Letterboxd at Movie Wire Show. Now we're going to jump into Josh's review of Black Panther Wakanda Forever over at the Talking Smack podcast. But before I do, I just want to state that I left my review to be purposely vague, and Josh does a great job keeping it spoiler-free, but he does dig a little deeper into plot points in his review. So if you have not yet seen Black Panther and you want to keep it 100% unknown, then there's your warning ahead of time. But I also want to encourage anybody listening to tune into the Talking Smack podcast. Josh does an incredible job with the content he has on his show, and you will know what I mean after listening to his review. After I listened to his review, I had to message this man right away because I got hyped on the things he saw from this movie. He is my go-to expert when it comes to comic book movies, and his outlook never disappoints. So if you don't like my point of view on Marvel or DC films, I would take no offense. As I said in my review, Josh is the expert with comic book movies. I just call them as I watch them. Now let's hear a promo from Josh over the Talking Smack podcast, then we'll dive right into his review of Black Panther Wakanda Forever.
Do you love comics, movies, video games, and more? We do too. Join me, Josh Scar, and my cast of colorful co-hosts on Talking Smack. Look for our yellow and red icon on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods, and other podcast players.
And now, our feature presentation.
How's it going, Movie Wire listeners? This is Josh Scar from Talking Smack, superheroes, movies, animation, and comics. And I am here to talk with you about the latest entry into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Black Panther Wakanda Forever. This has been one of my most anticipated movies of the year, let alone within the MCU. This movie is very much a farewell and love letter to Chadwick Boseman as much as it is the next entry in the MCU. The movie opens with T'Challa on his deathbed off screen, while Shuri frantically tries to recreate the heart-shaped herb that should be able to heal him. What this means in the context of the universe, I don't know, because he technically should already have the heart-shaped herb as part of his biology. How a new heart-shaped herb or just replenishing the heart-shaped herb is going to fix it, I don't know, but it's the movie's way of letting you know that she's trying to do something. Sadly, T'Challa passes away, obviously because Chadwick Boseman is no longer with us as well, and we get the first tearjerker moment of the movie, which is completely silent fanfare, completely dedicated to Chadwick Boseman, similar to what they did with Stan Lee in Captain Marvel. Pretty much the rest of the movie plays out as a fallout of what happens when the king of a nation, of arguably the most powerful nation within the Marvel universe, has passed away, as well as the protector being Black Panther. Both mantles T'Challa carried. Ryan Coogler returns as director as well as co-screenplay writer with Joe Robert Cole. Coogler is just masterful with his script writing. I think Marvel really stunts Coogler in terms of his creativity because it has to follow a certain visual style. And if you go back and watch movies like Creed and Fruitvale Station, I think you're going to notice that there are some directing things that he really enjoys doing, like tracking shots and isolation shots that never really carry over into these movies. But he is able to do a lot of stuff that other Marvel directors probably can't, namely being able to present African culture in a way that is very respectful and prideful and not just stereotypical. We have Letitia Wright leading the way as Shuri, and Lupita Nyong'o as Nakia returning, as well as Denai Guerrera as Okoye, Winston Duke as M'Baku. Angela Bassett returns in a powerhouse performance that is worthy of awards as Queen Ramonda. We have Tina Huerta debuting as Namor, the Submariner from the comics, one of Marvel's oldest characters, as the main villain of the story. Martin Freeman returns as Everett Ross. Dominique Thorne debuts as Riri Williams, aka Ironheart. And then we have a couple of, not newcomers, but characters that get a bigger spotlight. Those being Florence Kasumba as Io and Michaela Cole as Aneka. These two characters get a little bit of play in the first Black Panther movie. They had an LGBTQ subplot that got cut for international reasons, we'll say. Both characters get a little bit more play in this movie, but their relationship gets the Disney treatment of having an easily cut out moment that shows that they are in a loving relationship so that they can keep their international audiences happy. Black Panther Wakanda Forever is very much a movie about loss and grief and how we handle that grief. Without getting into too many spoilers, it's very good, and it does do the Marvel thing that allows for some fun jokes within the movie and some action beats as well. The last thing I'm going to get into in this brief review, I do find it very ballsy that Disney allowed Marvel to make a movie that very much looked a lot like, or had moments that felt like the Avatar: The Way of Water trailer that played before the movie. I'm very curious how audiences will react once they see Avatar: The Way of Water compared to what just happened in Black Panther. I don't think that going back to the visual styles that Coogler, I feel, is kind of held back by with the way the MCU has decided to present itself, the color palette of this movie until we get towards the end of the movie is very bland. We have the opening funeral sequence for T'Challa, which is fantastic. Everyone's dressed in white. It's heartbreaking, but beautiful. And then the rest of the movie looks like a Marvel movie. There's gray backgrounds with characters in very dull colors and not a whole lot going on. And then we follow Namor's character around as well, and we go to his underwater kingdom. And it's very hard to see. The movie has a lot of moments where it's very dark, and that may be intentional, but it's also kind of distracting at this point where you're just like, where's the color, man? So between having a lot of visual comparisons to just even the trailer of Avatar: The Way of Water, as well as a color palette that is not as vibrant as what we see in the Way of Water trailer, it's going to be very interesting to see how these movies stack up being almost a month apart from each other as far as how audiences will react to them. I do think Ryan Coogler is an amazing director, and I think he gets the best out of these performances, especially, as I said, Angela Bassett. Letitia Wright, I've always felt, is a little stilted in her performances. She's very very flat, but she does what she needs to do. And she has pretty good comedic timing. But the standout in this movie is Angela Bassett as well as Dominique Thorne as Riri Williams. With that, my score for Black Panther Wakanda Forever is 2.5 stars. And thank you to Justin for having me on for this quick review. And if you want to hear a full spoiler review, as well as talking about how this movie affects the larger MCU, please check out my podcast, Talking Smack, Superheroes, Movies, Animation, and Comics. And we will talk to you soon.
It's so hard to keep track and even have time to read all the trending topics on the web. Now there's a new app to help with all of those problems. Newsly is an audio app for iOS and Android. It picks up web articles about the most trending topics on the web at any given moment and reads them to you in a natural human voice. For the first time in the history of the internet, the entire web becomes listenable. Browse articles from topics you choose and start playing. You can follow any topic as specific as you like, from sports, science, to Bitcoin. You can even follow Kardashian. It will find you the latest articles and read them to you out loud. And guess what? They have podcasts as well. Explore trending podcasts from over 50 countries. The Movie Wire is now a featured podcast on the Newsly app. Download and use Newsly for free now. The link will be in the description of this episode. You can also use one of my promo codes that you will find in the description as well to get you a 1-month free premium subscription. Stop scrolling, start listening, download Newsly today. Set on a remote island off the west coast of Ireland around 1923 during the Irish Civil War. We follow lifelong friends Padraic, played by Colin Farrell, and Colm, played by Brendan Gleeson, who find themselves at an impasse when Colm unexpectedly puts an end to their friendship with little to no explanation in the Martin McDonagh dark comedy drama, The Banshees of Inisherin.
Colm's sonny Larry. Didn't you and he used to be the best of friends?
We're still the best of friends.
No, you're not.
Who says we're not?
Sit somewhere else.
Now, if I've done something to you, just tell me what I've done to you.
But you didn't do anything to me. I just don't like you no more.
You didn't like me yesterday.
Why does he not want to be friends with you no more? What is he, 12?
What the hell's going on with you, me feckin' brother?
He's dull, Siobhan.
But he's always been dull.
The other night, 2 hours you spent talking to me about the things you found in your little donkey shite that day.
Well, it wasn't me little donkey shite, it was me pony shite, which shows how much you were listening.
If you don't stop talking to me...
Colin!
And if you don't stop bothering me, I have a set of shears at home, and each time you bother me from this day on, I'll take those shears and I'll take one of my fingers off with them, and I'll give that finger to you until I have no fingers left. Does this make things clearer to you?
Not really, no.
Starting from now. But shush like, Polly. You know, shush like.
Yeah, I'd shush like. Would you not want him to have to do the one finger to see if he was bluffing, like?
No, we wouldn't.
Because worse comes to worse, he can still play the fiddle with 4 fingers, I bet ya.
Go on back to your own gang now, Polly.
And talking to me! Are you?
Why aren't you talking to Porrick no more?
That wouldn't be a sin now, would it, Father?
No, but it's not very nice either, is it?
Do you know who we remember for how nice they was in the 17th century?
Who?
Absolutely no one. Yet we all remember the music of the time. Everyone to a man knows Mozart's name.
I don't, so there goes that theory.
Getting round for any more of this madness.
Let's just call it quits.
We won't call it quits. We'll call it the start.
This was a first for me. Now, no matter what, I always sit through the entirety of the credits of a movie out of respect to the filmmakers and talent, and to gain some knowledge of the names of what I liked. Most people, unfortunately, do not do this unless the studios tease you to stay with a post-credit scene in a big blockbuster film. There were about 15 to 20 people in my theater, and as the credits popped up, I did not hear one sound of a theater seat change. I looked around the theater and everybody was still sitting. Even more so, the couple in front of me started a discussion about the film. And yes, I was eavesdropping, so sue me. The gentleman made a comment that I didn't expect. he broke down what he took away from the film. He made a comment about a piece of symbolism in the film that was quite brilliant. He brought up the topic of religion and said in the time of war, facing your own mortality, with not even having the luxuries like today, including electricity, social relationships in a small town in the middle of a war couldn't survive without a bartender and a priest. The two go hand in hand in society. I wanted to hear where this man was going to go with it, but the partner he was with didn't acknowledge this comment. I stared at the back of the gentleman's partner's head, waiting for her to acknowledge this man so I can hear where he was going, but instead she blew her nose and took a sip of water. He was on to something that got me to think on the way home, and as the credits ended, almost in unison, we all got up and headed towards the exit door, in which multiple groups were having small discussions on this film. I was in heaven. This is a rare film that can make every member of an audience stay in their seats for the credits, and not only that, but have a discussion about it right away. The Banshees of Inisherin is written and directed by Martin McDonagh, who is a master at character direction with his character-driven films, but also his eye for the perfect master shots to capture true emotion with the camera. I have yet to see a film of McDonagh's that isn't a true genius when it comes to his directorial style. He has written and directed the 2008 film In Bruges, 2012's Seven Psychopaths, 2018's Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, and those were appetizers compared to his finest work to date in The Banshee of Inisherin. McDonagh brings back Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson from the 2008 film In Bruges, and the two here are electrifying on screen together. They have a chemistry that just feels real and natural, and the two just flow on screen when they deliver their dialogue. The two have a likability by using the opposites attract formula where they are completely different, and McDonagh is a craftsman at his character writing where they never truly gives too much away about his characters. McDonagh brings back Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson from 2008's In Bruges, and the two are electrifying on screen together. They have a chemistry that just feels real, and the two just flow on screen when they deliver their dialogue. The two have a likability by using the opposites attract formula, where they are completely different, and McDonagh is a craftsman at his character writing, where he never truly gives too much away about his characters. Even from the mere presence of his characters, Padraic and Colm seem basic, but as the two characters adapt to the progression of the story, McDonagh gives the audience just enough to build curiosity about each one's intent or motivation to act the way they do towards each other, but with an underlying understanding of each other. Each of our characters poses to put each other in a situation where it leaves the audience to wonder where the filmmakers are really going to take this. I remember sitting there 20 minutes into the film really enjoying the dialogue and performances, but I thought to myself, how is McDonagh going to stretch this into a 2-hour film? And he has a talent and method of slowly pulling you into his films without you even realizing it, but using his talent of character creation to give the audience a sense of wonder of what the creation's going to be. Every day at 2 p.m., Padraic goes to the home of Colm, and they head to the pub until one day, Padraic knocks on Colm's home, and Colm ignores his knock. Later, the two end up at the pub where Colm has to explain to Padraic he doesn't want to be friends anymore. When Padraic questions this, he is met with a plain basic, I don't like you anymore. This turns Padraic obsessed into finding out why, and this pushes Colm to be more obsessed into not telling Padraic why. And at times, Padraic's obsessing just seems to run on the verge of stupidity. But as the theme of loneliness and acceptance, and Padraic and Colm are not the only ones to seem to be longing for company. The film even brings up this feeling of Colm secluding himself out of being depressed. But as we look around the town of all the cast and characters, we start to discover that all the characters seem to show a sign of depression and some sort of loneliness. There's an almost symbolic character in this film, Mrs. McCormick, played by Sheila Flitton, that tends to amplify people's vulnerabilities, whether she's a banshee or a mere symbol of depression will be left to the viewer's interpretation. The film, when it gets to its climax, some of the audience members may tend to think, well, that escalated quickly. The climax does give off an uncomfortable and unsettling feeling, but the film never rushes its theme. It graciously takes its time to truly let the audience be engulfed into the story, settings, and characters, with some of the best shots I have seen in years. The film is defined as a dark comedy drama, and there are times in this movie where we are wondering if we should even be laughing or are we supposed to be shocked. You will know what I'm talking about when you see it. That just a mere sound made me chuckle, but then it had me thinking why I'm even laughing at it in the first place. But all the talent involved have earned the right to be edgy in its dark humor. It didn't treat itself as a just going for shock factor film. It used its characters to prove a point, and that's what makes the dark humor in this work. It's not overpowering, it's subtle at times, but when it actually gets edgy, it actually gets edgy. and it does so with a point in mind. And that is the pure brilliance of the writing and the dialogue in this movie. This is one of those films I have been talking about more and more on my show, where it must be seen on a big screen to truly appreciate the characters' body language and interactions. And of course, a beautiful cinematography by Ben Davis, who strangely enough is known for his work as a director of photography for numerous Marvel films. This will truly be his work of art on his resume. I will be utterly shocked if this film doesn't show up on the following categories during Oscars: Best Director, Best Actor, Supporting Actor, Editing, Original Screenplay, Original Score, and of course, Best Picture. The Banshee of Inisherin is McDonagh's masterpiece, where he gets almost every detail right, from the character direction, from the cinematography, from the camera shots, to the scenic views, to the pacing of it. This is not only one of his masterpieces, but it is the best film of the year. And I know we still have December to come, but this is going to be a tough one to beat for one of my best films of the year. I'm giving The Banshees of Inisherin a very passionate, solid 4 stars. And that's a cut on this week's edition of The Movie Wire. I want to thank our friend Josh over at the Talking Smack podcast yet again for not only his ongoing support of this show, but allowing me to play his take on Black Panther Wakanda Forever. I will leave his link to his show in the description of this episode for all to check out. And once again, I want to thank all of you for listening and thank you for your support. You can also show support by following me on Instagram, Twitter, and Letterboxd at Movie Wire Show. And don't forget to leave me a review on Apple Podcast. Until next week, do me a favor, make sure you stay for after the credits to show the respect for those that put their blood, sweat, and tears into making a feature film, and make sure you support your local movie theaters.
A verdict has been made on this episode of The Movie Wire by your host, Justin Henson. He thanks you for listening to the show. You can follow Justin on Instagram and Twitter at Movie Wire Show, or visit his website, www.themoviewire.com. Oh, and don't forget to leave a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I'm sure he'd love to hear from you. Until next time, we will see you at the movies.
Thank you for bringing me to the movies.